She looked at me like I had the answer. I did not have the answer. I had a badge, a thermos of cold coffee, and a silver blanket I had just laid over her mother 20 feet away, and I could not move. I have been a lot of things in my life. A state trooper for 38 years, a husband, a father, a man who has knocked on doors at 2 in the morning and delivered news that broke people in half. I have never once, not one time, fallen apart on the job, until a little girl in a red coat asked me where her mommy was. I need to tell you what happened that day. Not because I have made peace with it. I have not. But because I have been carrying it for 37 years, and it is getting heavy. And maybe saying it out loud is the only thing left to try. The Poconos in October are not real. That is the only way I can describe it. Monroe County, Route 611. The trees go orange and red so deep it looks like the whole mountain is on fire without the smoke. Tourists used to drive up from Philadelphia just to look at it. Leaf peepers, we called them. Sunday traffic, families, kids with their faces against the glass. I was in my cruiser, a 1987 Ford LTD Crown Victoria, blue and gold, Pennsylvania State Police. The heater worked about half the time. I had a thermos of black coffee going cold in the passenger seat. No cell phone, no navigation, just you and that radio. And whatever God saw fit to send your way that shift. I want you to understand what that kind of quiet does to a man after 3 hours. You stop bracing. You let your shoulders drop. You start believing the day is going to give you nothing worse than a speeding ticket. That is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a trooper. Not the call itself, the quiet before it. I was 3 hours in, 2 speeding tickets written, parked just past a long bend in the road, running radar. The leaves were coming down, big orange ones, drifting across the windshield like they had nowhere to be. And I remember thinking, I remember this exactly. I thought, this is a good day. I do not think that anymore. Not about any day. Not since then. The radio crackled. The dispatcher kept it short. Reported accident, 611 southbound, near the Bartonsville exit. 2 vehicles, unknown injuries. Less than 2 miles out, I hit the lights, hit the siren, and I went. I smelled it before I saw it, burning rubber, and something underneath that, something hot and metallic that you never forget once you have smelled it. I came around the bend and I stopped the cruiser hard across both lanes, and I sat there for exactly 1 second, just one, because what was in front of me took a second to process. A station wagon in the guardrail. A 1983 Buick Century, brown. The front end was not there anymore. Accordion folded, steam rising from what was left of the engine. Across the road, a Ford F-150 pickup. Driver's side caved all the way in, and the leaves still coming down around it, orange and slow. Like nature had not gotten the message. Grabbed my kit, got out. I smelled gasoline. Strong. First rule, check for hazards. I went to the pickup first because that driver was visible and I needed to know if he was alive. He was. Barely. Pulse, but not strong. Not conscious. I stabilized his head and I left him. I crossed the road to the station wagon, and I want to stop right here. Because what I'm about to tell you, I have never said it in this order before. I have told pieces of it to a chaplain, to a department counselor, but never the whole thing. Never start to finish. So give me a second. Just give me a second. I want to tell you what I saw when I got to that car. But first, you need to understand something. You do not feel. Not in the moment. You learn to put a kind of glass between yourself and what is in front of you. Clinical. Necessary. It works. I got to the station wagon. Windshield gone. Front passenger door open and bent all the way back. I looked at the woman behind the wheel. Young. 30, maybe 35. Brown hair. Her seatbelt was still on. There was a pine tree air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. One of those little green ones shaped like a tree. Swinging, slow and steady, back and forth, like a pendulum. I checked for a pulse. You always check. It is the last dignity you can give a person. There was nothing. I went back to my cruiser for the thermal blanket. Standard issue. Silver. I covered her. Carefully. The way a person deserves to be covered. And then I stepped back. You get 1 second. That is the rule I made for myself. 1 second to be a human being. Then you go back to work. I had used about half that second when I heard something from the back seat. A sound. Small. Soft. The kind of sound that takes a moment to make sense of because your brain does not want to accept what it is. I did not open that rear door right away. I want to be honest with you. I stood at the side of that car for a moment, my hand on the door handle, and I thought whatever is on the other side of this is going to be something I carry for the rest of my life. I did not know the shape of it yet, but I knew that much. I opened the door. She was in a booster seat, 5 years old, maybe 6, red coat, little brown boots with buckles on the sides. Her face was perfect. Not a mark on her, not a scratch. The physics of a crash are cruel that way. One person takes everything, the one 20 inches away takes nothing, and the one who takes nothing sometimes has to carry the most. She was not crying. She was past crying. She was in that place children go, when the world has stopped making sense and they are waiting for an adult to explain it, just sitting there, still as a painting, looking at me with these enormous dark eyes, patient in a way that no child should ever have to be patient. I crouched to her level, knees on the asphalt, uniform be damned. I asked her name, told her mine, asked if anything hurt. She shook her head, slow. Her chin was trembling. She looked at me, then past me, toward the front seat, past the silver blanket. Her eyes moved across it like she was trying to read something in a language she did not quite know yet. And then she looked back at me, and she asked me the question, "Mister, where is my mommy?" I had never, not once in 38 years, been asked that question by someone that small, who had no idea that the silver blanket swinging slightly in the October wind meant that the answer was already done, already decided, already over. I looked at her. My mouth was open, and I had nothing. There is no training for that. You are alone with that child and that question and whatever you're made of. That is all you have. I reached out and I put my hand over hers. Her fingers were cold. She let me. She did not pull away. And I said her mommy was resting, that she was okay, that the helpers were on their way, and that I was going to stay right here, that I was not going anywhere, not for 1 single second. She looked at me for a long moment, the way a child decides whether to trust you, whether you mean what you say. I have never felt so examined in my life, not by a judge, not by my commanding officer, by this small person in a red coat who needed exactly one thing from me, to not be alone. She did not say anything. I thought she was going to ask again. Her mouth opened just slightly, and I felt everything in me go cold, because I still did not have the answer. I had not found it in the 10 seconds since the first time. I was not going to find it now, but she closed her mouth. "Okay," she said, "just that." And she took my hand. And I have to tell you, those 7 words, her mommy was resting, the helpers were coming. I do not know to this day if they were the right ones, but her hand was warm, and mine was not. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. I know because I counted every one of them. She held my hand the whole time. She did not ask again. Children know more than we give them credit for. She had looked at that blanket. She had done the math in whatever way a 5-year-old does the math. And she had decided the most important thing right now was the hand. There is a part of me that believes she was comforting me, not the other way around. I never found out her name. Records were sealed. A relative took her. She would be close to 40 years old now, living somewhere, carrying something. I hope she does not remember that day with too much detail. I hope the red coat is the last thing she remembers. And the hand. Right then, plain words, the way a straight shooter tells it. I have never landed on an answer. 37 years and still looking. A chaplain told me I did right. A counselor the department sent me to said the same. It did not feel like anything. Because the part of you that is still crouching on that asphalt in October 1989 does not care what a counselor thinks. That part of you is still looking at a little girl looking past you at a silver blanket, still trying to find the right words, still not finding them. Some nights I still see her, the red coat, the buckle boots, those dark eyes moving from the blanket back to my face, patient, trusting, like a man with a badge and a thermos of cold coffee and a heater that barely worked had any business holding the world together. But that is what it means. I have come to believe that is exactly what it means. Not that you have the answer, just that you show up. You hold somebody's cold hand. You count the minutes. And you do not leave until somebody else can carry them. I stayed. Whatever else I got wrong that day, I stayed. I have to believe that was enough. Some days I almost do.